Good evening. Have a call to order. Roll call vote, please. Roll call.
Weedman?
Yes.
Mack? LaCroix?
Present.
Mesco?
Here.
Northern?
Yes.
That's it, Perkinson.
All right, so we do have a quorum. Pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next is the approval of the agenda. Motion.
I'll
So-
make a,
Second.
okay. My motion, Tom second.
Mesco?
Aye.
Weedman?
Aye.
Northern?
Aye.
LaCroix?
Aye. Any public comments? Public? Public. Good thing. Okay, board reports. Anybody have anything?
Saw bridges of Madison County.
I like it.
I just want to say I appreciate the, staff, our superintendent and our staff, for keeping us up to date on the flood situation, ensuring that our schools was in pretty good shape. So a lot of schools suffered throughout the county, but thankfully ours were, facilities was not as affected. So
We just had a couple of little leaks here and there, and nothing anywhere near compared to what other districts had.
thank you for that.
Yeah. But along that same line, huge thanks goes out to our District 46 community, especially Chris Walk and Avon staff, for gathering food, clothing, and money. The money went to Red Cross, the clothing went to the Salvation Army, and the food went to the Avon Food Pantry. And they needed to take, I think it was 2 loads to these places, and our O&M staff took them today. But it was the whole multi-purpose room at Avon was just totally filled with things to help those who were flooded. So a lot of thanks to them. They did a great job. As you noticed as you came in, they're working on our roof here at GMS. The good news is that we've had 2 change orders, and typically when we tell you we've got change order, that means we're spending additional dollars. And in this case, we're saving about $29,000. I think that's the first time I've ever seen that in any projects we've ever had, so that's really great.
Over the change order.
It's in the flashing we can keep. It's in solid state. It's going to be there for a long time. And the other one had to do with insulation on the flat roof. Instead of picking up the units and revamping the insulation below, there's this insulation that can be wrapped and it's weather guarded on the outside. Still has the same warranty on it. The architects took a look at it and said that it was perfectly fine and it was comparable. And the thing that you're going to save on is the labor to have to actually take the units off. So that saved us about $14,000 right there.
So good things.
Is
And go ahead.
Is the color going to be exactly the same?
No, we had a hard time picking out the shingles, but it's close to.
If you look at the north end of the building, you can see the new shingles from the front.
All
And
right.
then the midsection and the south end still has the old shingles. It's comparable.
It's as close as we could get,
It's a nice color.
without.
It's hard to match it.
It is
when
when it's
after
20
years.
years
Yeah.
old. Yeah,
20,
25, whatever.
25-year-old.
A lot of the companies or the
Yeah.
materials change. You can never match that stuff.
Yeah,
like that.
no. And then I was going to ask Joe if he could just give us a little update on his installation going with his group.
Yeah, I want to give a huge shout out to the tech team. They've really been scrambling to get these wireless units up. We have 500 units to put up, so we knew that we were in a race for time. But they've got the majority of the classrooms already installed. I know they came back a sweaty mess today. There was 3 different installation teams out there, and they were knocking them out. They said they did, I want to say, like 40 classrooms, like in a half day.
Wow.
And so they were just rocking and rolling on that. So now what they've done is the majority, the classrooms, so they pop them into the center, and now they get to start working on the special area cases like here in the LRC and up in the multi-purpose rooms and things where they need scissors lift and things like that. So they've bought themselves some extra time, and yeah, we're ahead of schedule. So super happy about that.
And we're not going to talk about the budget right now. It's later on our agenda. So that's all I have.
Next is the consent agenda. Motion to approve consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Northern,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Mesco,
Aye.
and Weedman.
Kathleen's here.
Yes.
Aye.
Spread out everywhere.
Okay, next we're at the action items. First one is a motion to approve the pro version subscription to News ELA in the amount of $14,800.
So moved. Second.
We can just explain again so that everybody knows.
Amanda, you want to give a...
Newsella Pro is will be a subscription for all of our 5-8 teachers and students. It gives our staff and students access to differentiated levels of nonfiction articles and quizzes and writing prompts, and it's going to be really valuable in the curriculum that we do in this school year.
Amanda, where does the content come from? Is it
They have partnerships with the Smithsonian and National Geographic and ABC and all sorts of different news outlets where they're able to take their news content or their nonfiction content and rewrite it to be available for readers.
Okay.
Weedman,
Aye.
Mesco,
Aye.
Parkinson,
Aye.
Northern,
Aye.
LaCroy.
Aye.
Okay, next is the motion to approve online registration at a cost of $10,224.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second.
This is for,
Chris?
So update to our registration system, moving to an online-based system through Infinite Campus, which is a vendor that we already use. I think I got a couple of notes written down there, what it's going to do, and I know we talked about it last time. It's hopefully going to streamline the process a little bit, make it easier for people. And it's actually funny. People are taking this initial part and already rolling and seeing years into the future and trying to have the whole thing be online-based where you wouldn't even have to come in for proofs. There's a way to do that, but I know that's in the future. This is just step one. The basis for this is everybody knows what registration is like on that first day, and we're trying to make that process just a little bit easier for everyone and a little bit more friendly for everyone.
And that's for next year, though.
It would begin, we would try to roll out,
For
or we
kindergarten.
would roll out the kindergarten registration
Yep.
in the springtime, and then the following fall would be the complete online registration.
LaCroy,
aye?
Northern,
Aye.
Parkinson,
Aye.
Weedman,
aye.
Mesco.
Aye.
Okay, next is a motion to approve the waste management contract extension.
So moved.
Second.
This is, our contract is up for waste disposal. We've had waste management for a little while now. Last time they were the low bid by a pretty significant margin, and the bid actually included increases, but what Waste has been doing this past couple of years is keeping everything flat for us. So they haven't even been increasing as the bid initially stated the last go around, so they're still at that initial level. Not only that, they've also identified some areas where the pickups were excessive. So we're actually now currently paying about 13% less than we were at the beginning of the last contract, which was a reduction from the prior contract to that. So Waste Management is a good service, and the recommendation is to keep them at their 0% increase for next year as well.
Northern,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Parkinson, Mesco,
Aye.
Weedman.
Next is a motion to approve the resolution, hazardous conditions eligible for transportation.
And this is a list of roads that either have railroad crossings or are state highways that are busy highways. This is the same list we've seen for quite some time. So these are the road, the cause is to have transportation, have busing for our students.
What's the exact purpose of this? So that it delineates where we will and won't provide bus service?
Yes.
And we have to do this
Because this state has says these are hazardous roads. So we attempted to work with the state to get 120, to get a different type of transportation, especially for the people that live across from Prairie View. A red light, we've looked at underpasses, we've looked at overpasses, we've looked at crossing guards at 120. And we've been shot down either by the village or by the state every time, so.
Make that motion.
Thanks.
To approve. Need a second?
Northern,
Aye.
Parkinson,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
Mesco.
Next is a motion to approve the 2016 property tax appeal resolution. Just giving our lawyers permission to
Yes.
act
Defend-
on our behalf.
yes. Mhm.
So the appellants are typically commercial. Across the aisle from a homeowner.
Not
So
typically.
basically, when individuals appeal, it gives our attorney a right to
Yes, it gives the
fight it.
attorneys to fight it, yep.
So moved.
Second.
Mesco,
Aye.
Parkinson,
Aye.
Northern,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
LaCroy.
Aye.
Okay, next is a motion to approve and a second look at board policies. There's 8 policies that you have in your packet. Anywhere from board member conflict of interest, succession of authority, teaching about religion, schedules and employment year. So we've talked about them in the past, at least we've seen them at least once. They've gone through the board policy committees work, and most of them, if I remember right, are mostly very minor language changes based on changes in the law that came down from the state. So unless anybody has any questions about an individual policy?
I do, if you don't mind.
No?
As far as the drug and alcohol testing for school bus and commercial vehicle drivers, so it's required for the company to do the testing and provide us a report of the testing?
Correct, we don't have to do that,
Okay. Now, do we do any testing in our staff?
no.
And then secondly, with teaching about religion, have we had any incidents or complaints from parents or students in the past, the last few years, I guess, about
Over the
that?
12 years, I've had just one concern, and we've addressed it. It was here at this middle school, and we brought the parent in, and we adjusted to meet.
Yeah, because it's totally impossible to teach about,
Right.
certain communities, countries without speaking of religion. So I was
Right.
just wondering how frequently we get complaints
And
related
this
to that.
parent's concern was the student work display in the hall had they were talking about Germany and the Holocaust, and one of the students had a swastika on the painting, and this parent was very upset with that. But it was expression, it wasn't saying that the child supported this, it was more just a display of the
That
of the
history time.
story, yeah. So we had a lengthy discussion with her, and we took it down just because we knew that it offended her, but it was in no way meant to insult or harm anybody else.
It has to be a
Yeah,
caution area sometimes.
Right.
So, okay. That's all I had.
We have a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Northern,
Aye.
Mesco,
Aye.
Parkinson. Aye. Weedman
Aye.
and LaCroy.
Aye.
Okay. Concludes the agenda for action items. Next is unfinished business. One is the update on the state budget. While there is a state budget, they haven't approved the,
So,
School funding.
yeah, the state budget is interesting because there was a budget, then it was vetoed, then the veto was vetoed. So now we have a budget, sort of. So going back to the original, what the budget was, Senate Bill 6, in terms of education, it was increasing funding in, based on the evidence-based model by $350 million, which we know that Governor Rauner still has to approve. And it's not looking like he's in favor of that in its current form. But it also increased $65 million for transportation, which brings the proration up from 71% to 84%. It increased bilingual education by $50 million, increased bilingual by $38.5 million, and early childhood by $50 million. So the budget itself that is passed, sort of, is very favorable. Unfortunately, there are only certain things that ISB can act on that are allowed, and at this point in time, the budget was looking at roughly $11 billion based on what was passed, but the only thing that ISB can send to the comptroller for approval is 6.7, oh no, I'm sorry, it's even less than that. They can act on 5.226 billion of it, because the rest was tied to the evidence-based model, and it specifically mentions some state code that doesn't actually exist right now, so they can't act on anything that's tied to that state code.
It doesn't exist.
That does not exist.
What's the difference between what is SB 6 versus SB?
Senate Bill 6 was the funding bill for, I believe it was the entire funding bill that was approved.
Okay, and then SB 1
And
is
SB
the new
1
formula.
is the new state funding formula for education. That's the one that has been approved by the House and approved by the Senate, but at this point in time is kind of just sitting in limbo. I'm sure there's still some negotiations going on, but we'll figure out what happens hopefully soon enough. I think both sides are at a standstill, but somebody's going to have to blink. Then the thing about the evidence-based model is that money for special education personnel was tied to it, transportation was tied to it. It also had, the bilingual education was tied to it. So there's a lot of money that's been tied to it. And the $5.2 billion that has been appropriated, so we're seeing right now $0 for transportation, $0 for special ed reimbursement. So if we were to start off the year, and some of those categoricals were to come around, typically they're quarterly. We know that they get delayed since we've only received 2 last year. We wouldn't see any type of funding in those specific categoricals. So it sounds like they can give a little bit of money, which is going to be a good thing because there are some schools out there that can't even open their doors. For us, in general, I know David last time was looking to get some information on. Just walk to the other side. I created what I hope was a fairly simple chart. I didn't want to put too many numbers in it. I basically just wanted to start off and say this is our starting balance in each of the funds, a projected starting balance at the end of fiscal year 17, beginning year of fiscal year 18. And then I just went month by month and based off of revenue and expenditure projections. On this chart here, I left all state payments out. I didn't include anything from the state. So this is no general state aid, no categoricals, no other grants. And it just takes a look at the month by month, and you can tell where we start going negative in each of the funds. And then there's the fund that's highlighted a little bit, capital projects. In that fund, there's restricted dollars. Those are impact fees restricted to Park Campus only. So those can't be used in any other capacity. So those would have to stay there. We can shift around things like our operations and maintenance. We could do a loan to, let's say, the education fund, because that looks like it would be the fund that would suffer the most. Our working cash, we could use that to loan out to transportation and also to loan out to education as well until we would actually get our tax extension for, it would be our June tax extension in 2018. But what you'd see here is we'd be losing roughly $13.886 million in fund balance. Not all of that is due to the state money, but the vast majority of it is due to state money. And we would be able to make it through about mid-May before we would run out of funds and we would not be able to pay salaries at that time. So we would actually have to go out and try to borrow money, which is interesting because I know they were trying to pass something I saw that said that you couldn't borrow if you were at a certain limit, and they were trying to restrict borrowing, which would, I don't know how schools would function if they weren't allowed to borrow. I know our debt service extension base, we do have money in it, even though it looks like we don't have money because we were given an exemption based on our rapid growth. It looks like we are over the amount, but technically we are not. We could borrow up to $4 million. I think it was 4.4 or something like that. But should the state not give us any type of revenue stream, we would be able to make it through May. And then after that, we would have to find a way to borrow, whether it be through tax anticipation warrants or potentially another school district. I know that's been kind of a thing that's been happening lately. Schools have been lending money to other schools. It's a little bit of an increase in revenue for one side, and it's less of an expenditure for the one who's actually doing the borrowing.
What percentage of that negative amount, that 13,000, is state aid? No state aid coming in.
And for state aid,
I know it's not accurate, but like a estimate.
For state aid purposes, I put the estimate at $8.614 million, and then I had another additional 3.718 in other categoricals and other grant dollars.
So about 11 million or so.
It wound up being close to 12.3. I think when it was all said and done, it was about $1.5 million difference between the overall drop in fund balance. And some of that has to do with things like we were doing a roofing project. You know, and there are going to be some years where we've got larger projects and that's going to cost more money, and those are things that we've actually anticipated and have approved.
Well, it looks like it's deficit spending on purpose.
Yes, it's absolutely deficit spending on purpose.
On top of this, we also got a message today that we are possibly, I guess, a strong possibility of not getting any of our Title II dollars from the federal government.
That's not included in this chart because that came out very late.
How does that
Yes.
impact us?
So that's,
$90,000 towards professional development for our teachers, which we use and.
If we did not get any Title II funding, it was the absolute devastating for our professional development.
What about, doesn't it affect school leaders too? Is there any
Yes, so
funds
Title
there?
II can be used for school leaders, teachers. We use a lot of it to pay for curriculum related stays, which we use to write and update our curriculum. It would be absolutely devastating to receive no Title II funding. Absolutely devastating.
You said it's about 90,000.
federal government,
that?
well, DeVos
About
is
90,000.
Roughly 90,000. Was that what we received? It's fluctuated. It's actually gone down a little bit.
It's gone down a little bit, but it's still a significant amount of money that we're able to use to better all of our staff, it was better for all of our students, and it doesn't count our regular budget. We would not be able to do a lot of the things that we have done, especially this year with all of the curriculum writing that we've done.
We'd really be limited to our late starts. That would be the extent of any kind of, which is an hour and a half, one time a month. Totally not acceptable. But everybody's going to be in the same boat, so. So lots of happy news.
Can't encourage you more than talk to your
Right.
politicians.
Well, they
Doesn't
want to
affect
put it
us.
into charters, so.
Right.
it's
So what now?
They want to put it,
They're misguided on the validity and benefit of charter schools, which are meant to inform public schools. But they're kind of making them like a McDonald's franchise.
yeah.
Anything, other discussion on that, on the budget?
No, just we'll keep you informed. I mean, I try to send you out whatever I get so that you can see what I'm being told and what Chris is being told.
Chris, did you make it to the thing for Melinda?
I did. In general, it was a press conference. They had 6 or 7 speakers. Melinda, and then Round Lake and Milburn and even Barrington got up because they wanted to get school districts of all different socioeconomic statuses up there. It was basically a push for SB1, and SB1, you know, when it hits the governor's desk, needs to be signed. And I know the battle. You know, the governor says he likes 90% of SB1. There are certain things that he doesn't like. He thinks it's a bailout for Chicago, and I don't think he likes the pension piece of it, which is, I don't think, the Chicago argument, and this is coming from Melinda, is not a valid argument because this doesn't differentiate between location or where you're at. This is based on the model itself, you know, the money that you are getting. There are areas here in Lake County that will be getting more than some of the Chicago schools.
You mean his Chicago argument?
His Chicago argument, yeah. And then the pension argument, I'm not even sure. That's tough because that's almost an entirely separate argument. That, you know, you're talking about the state constitution getting involved and taking away pensions potentially, and it's the whole gist of it was a lot of school districts stood up in front of everybody and stood up in front of the media and said, "This is something that you need to sign. This is something that is good for education. We can't stop kicking it down the road. We can't stop." You know, our funding formula doesn't work. It's archaic. It's not equitable whatsoever. You know, it's time to make a change.
And one of the biggest pieces of that SB1 and the funding is, one, it's not tied to property values anymore, correct?
It's not tied to property values, and it's not tied to average daily attendance. It's tied to student count, which is great.
Which is huge.
Yeah, and it's tied to, well, there's 27 different elements.
Student need.
Yeah, student need, you know, local effort, and it's the good thing about this for those school districts such as Barrington who stood up and said, "I fully support this." We've seen different models come across that were, you know, a different version where it said, okay, we're just going to redistribute monies. And then you saw potentially a Barrington losing $2 million, $3 million. I think Naperville's losing 9 or 10, and same thing with Tinley Park.
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't do that. This says where you're at now, you're going to stay, and new monies that come in will be distributed to those schools in most need. So it's a much fairer way to solve the problem. It'll be a slower process, but instead of completely shifting and turning a lot of schools upside down, you know, you're going to be helping schools out that weren't receiving that help in the past.
Do you have I won't say cheat sheet, but like cliff notes of the effects and changes of SB1?
Sure, we can get them to you.
Thank you.
Be helpful.
Okay.
I have the formula too that I got at the Triple I conference last time that I can get to you.
Did you take a look at I sent you an attachment,
The what?
an SB1 kind of presentation?
I did not get a chance. I've been out of town. So.
Okay, I'll
Does
send
it
that to
have
everybody.
Yeah, that would be good, 'cause
Excel spreadsheet
then-
with all the different factors.
You know, it doesn't have that. I do have a hard copy of that one as
I
well.
do too.
This one, it was this still might be something that you could go online and maybe catch a repeat of the webinar. It goes through Senate Bill 1.
I was looking for a quick.
Yeah, you can follow along and it'll tell you all about it. It'll tell you about.
But
talk
you
about
just
the
like a
advantages.
one-pager that gave.
Yeah, just,
Yeah,
you
okay.
know,
We'll
yeah.
get that to you.
I'm sure Dave's like I've been fielding a lot of questions from
Yeah.
friends and neighbors, and I've been trying to give them as much information as I can so that they understand that this is a good thing, especially for our school district and
Okay.
so on and so forth.
Okay, we'll get you a cheat sheet to
Thank you.
have with you.
It'd be nice to, you know, if you could put the estimated benefit for our district, so when we,
Okay.
you know, talk to people.
And part of that we're still kind of disputing, I think, right? Because they came out with a number that was like $358,000 increase for our district. Chris, when he did the formula, came up with like a $2,700 increase. So we've been trying to get together with Melinda Bush, but between vacations, floods, budget crisis, and everything else like that, we've been having a hard time hooking up with her to try and make that happen.
And I'm trying to wrap my head around that. I think a lot of it is the numbers that they gave us through ISB were 2015-16 were based off of 2015-16 numbers. And everybody's saying it's going to be based off of 2016-17 numbers, which ours changed a little bit, especially general state aid changed. And if that is the cap. It's a you know, $1 million difference right there. So if they're going to base it off of 2015-16 numbers versus base it off of 2016-17 numbers,
Talking about, what, enrollment numbers?
general state aid.
Currently what we
No, but
receive.
you're saying, oh, it's based on the general
General
state
state
aid.
aid.
General state aid.
16 versus 16.
Correct.
Yes.
So,
Because of the whole harmless clause that they had put into the bill, we wouldn't go backwards. But we're going backwards because of already, based on the way our economy is changing in the district, we've been starting to slowly lose general state aid because of the funding formula. So it all depends on when they draw that line.
if this is signed in its current form, the timing couldn't be better for this district. I mean, if it is truly based off of 16-17 numbers. I mean, this is it right here.
Yeah, but I want to, I just want to just make the one point is that as much as I want to just see this district prosper, I want to make sure that we get real reform related to the school funding. And,
Sure.
if this year it helps us and next year it hurts us, I don't want that to be,
Yeah.
the case, so.
Yeah, I mean, the overall bill itself is, the thought behind it is obviously make education equitable in Illinois, to the best of our abilities, because right now we're probably one of the worst states when it comes to that.
Number
That will
50
be-
is the official rank, I guess.
And
We'll
the hard
be
part
one
is
of the
if
most
state
progressive
decides
after
to
this.
cut funding, so they put an extra $35 billion into it this year, if they say, well, we're gonna take 20 of that $1 billion out next year, it's more like prorating the whole thing all over again.
Yeah.
They have to, I honestly think they would be nice if they were to say, okay, this is a 5-year plan, and we're gonna keep it like this we're not gonna change it for 5 years. That gives school districts the ability to actually forecast
Yeah.
and budget, which right now we're a year-to-year crapshoot.
And not only that, you don't even know by the beginning of the year.
Right.
July 1st,
I think
sometimes you just don't have a clue.
that's what every industry, every governmental type
Right.
industry right now. You don't know until you start.
Was there not an element of the budget deal that also had to do with the property tax freeze, and is that still in
That
place?
was taken out.
That's off of the
Good.
actual budgets that were passed.
Yeah,
There's no
people
property
voted
tax
against
freeze.
I thought that property tax freeze was one of the contingencies for Browner.
It was, but he
Was, but it's
He
not.
got
They
overridden.
yanked it
Yeah.
got
out.
overridden, yeah.
That was the now. I'll go back to Senate Bill 1 and say, it's not signed. Property tax freeze. If he wants to try to attach a property tax freeze, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, that could be something that still materializes.
All opinion. We've got nowhere. Okay, topics for,
Oh, we missed one. Major
sorry.
impact.
moving ahead, sorry.
That's all right.
New business, discussions for major impact purchase for Frederick in the amount of $7,614.57.
Frederick would like to, with this last classroom set, they'll be able to have one set for each classroom wing in the building. It's helping with testing and helping with education. And they've used this, the money will come out of their school building supply funds. It's very similar to what both Park and GMS have done.
Questions on that, or-
Those will be here the first day of school.
If the board approves, yeah.
So move.
Well,
Can we give tentative approval?
I was just
Get
going
it
to say,
moving?
could I have tentative approval?
Vote
so we-
on it next month,
Okay, great.
otherwise there'll be school
Yeah.
here in a matter of days.
Hear that one, Joe and Leslie?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And we'll put it on the next.
Topics for future agenda items?
Well, budget will be on there again.
Preliminary budget presentation.
The approval of the purchase of Chromebooks. Anything else we've got to put on there?
Contracts coming up.
No, we've got the waste management was the last one that,
In November, I believe, we have a copier contract coming up. It'd be fleet copiers. We kind of gone through this before. I don't think it'll take.
Food service is all done, transportation's all done.
Food
Right.
service is done.
Transportation, we're still working on. That'll take us several more months.
Well, I meant the current transportation.
Yeah,
Oh,
current
yeah.
transportation's all
Okay.
squared
I
away.
was thinking of contracts off the top of my head.
We'll update you where we are on the solar project.
A question, have we ever had like a board liaison in a sense to like a school, like one member picked the school to work with?
We
I know-
did do that 4 or 5 years ago. Each board member had a
school that
a
they,
school.
you know, they went to most of the school events.
Mhm.
They, you know, because I know that, you know, some of us have kids in the schools and we could probably attend more events at that school, but some of us don't have kids in certain schools.
Right.
So I think it would be a good idea if the board decided to do something like that. And I would even say, I'll pick a school that's not my kid's school.
Right.
So that it'll, you know, give me a better chance. And I know we all can do that anyway, but, you know, I just think that'd be a good idea.
So we want to talk about it at the next time?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if any other board members would.
I'm just thinking my schedule logistically. I make it to my kids' events and then try to go to, I can go to some, but probably not as frequently as I guess would be
and
expected.
maybe your school, maybe your kid's school, because of your schedule. Like I said, my schedule may be a little more flexible, so I may
Right.
say, hey, I'll take Avon or something versus, you know, my kid's school. But I just think that would be a good idea.
No, I like the idea. I just don't want to overpromise.
Well, we'll put that on the
And
agenda.
you don't have to go to everything. But, you know.
I know, I would feel guilty, so.
Well, for what it's worth, when I got on the board 2 years ago, the first year, I just read horizontally at the bottom of this agenda here where it had my name, and it happened to be opposite GMS, and I thought that was the assignment there. I really believed that. So I went and tried to go to all the stuff I could at GMS.
Oh, really?
I had the district office.
Oh, see, yeah, no, Park has 2 schools. So it's shared. East and the West.
Okay. Any public comments? I guess I don't know if it's necessarily a public comment, but a question that maybe we can explore. One, first, thanks to Avon and Mr. Walt for all the
Yes.
hard work the entire staff did for up there to try and help for anybody that was affected by the last flood, the 100-year flood that came 30 years later. But along those lines, you know, I'm seeing a lot of, I guess, for more lack of a better term, cries for help from Brown Lake School District.
Yes.
They had a couple of schools that were flooded. I'm not sure of the logistics or if it's even possible, or maybe even some of our O&M staff to lend a hand. I mean, it'd be on our dime.
Sure.
Maybe lend a hand if they have something that they really need done.
Okay.
I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to sending 1 or 2 guys over there to help.
Okay.
And then there sounds like their libraries were drastically affected. I don't know if, I don't even know if we can do it or not, but maybe if our individual school libraries could go through and look at our books and see what books are maybe not as used as frequently.
Even people in the community who can have a book drive.
Well, I know.
Or even if we host a book drive,
Yeah.
that we can, you know, try and replenish their libraries. I mean, libraries are important, and they probably use them quite a bit. And I think if we can, maybe as a District 46 can step up and try and see if we can help them in some way.
And the ways that you mentioned, Jim, was amazing, but it may be some other ones. So I would suggest talking to the school superintendent, because I know that the insurance company had agreed to fund 100% of all the losses, right? So it may not be books that they may need. It may be something else that we'll be more instrumental in helping them.
Okay, I'll
Maybe
talk
they
to
just
Connie.
write a check for the books from the insurance company that was destroyed.
Okay.
But, you know,
Right.
I still think the partnership and trying to help would be a...
And we are working with them if they do need some temporary classroom space. We'll work with them on that too.
Even a book drive for
Yeah.
families affected.
Yeah. Renters insurance, you know, a lot of people would never take the opportunity to get renters insurance. As renters, we try at the household, we try to make sure we encourage the families to do that. Because if there's something happen, if there's a power outage, even if it's our fault, you're supposed to have renters insurance. So we can't replace your food. Insurance just don't cover that.
Yeah.
So our insurance don't cover that in a sense. So.
I actually got a quote from Allstate for the FEMA flood insurance, and it was very reasonable. I mean, depending on the cost of, I mean, to replace everything in your house. And they have certain rules, like for some reason rugs aren't covered on the basement floor and stuff like that, but just the water backup and the flood insurance are not that bad. So I think Allstate and State Farm around here are, they'll give you a quote and then you purchase it separately. And I think the 100-year flood could happen more frequently given the severe storm warnings.
Yeah,
right
that
now,
we have tonight, right.
Anything else? Anybody? Okay. We do not have a need for a closed session, speak English goodly. So, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second. Jinx, buy me a
I
Coke.
withdraw my second.
LaCroix,
Aye.
Parkinson,
Aye.
Mesco,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
Northern.
All right.
All right, next meeting is in August.
Do you have,